Nintendo is about to do something they have never done before for Switch 2. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have much to discuss surrounding Nintendo and the Switch 2. My hype is ever building. Day by day, as we get closer to the launch of Switch 2 next week, I grow more and more excited for this console. But it's looking like that hype is going to go to another level because we're hearing about different things surrounding Nintendo's plans regarding announcements for Switch 2, which also, yes, ties into a big Nintendo Direct, and it's looking like the way Nintendo is going to handle things this time around will be unprecedented. We could be looking at more announcements for this console than we've seen for any other prior Nintendo console in a short span of time. Things are looking to be very exciting and perhaps a bit overwhelming, which is what we're going to be getting into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out, I'm now aiming for a new goal of 60,000 subscribers. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So here's the thing that Nintendo is doing that they've never done before for Switch 2. Summer Games Fest. We are proud to welcome a record-setting 60+ partners for Summer Games Fest 2025. A global celebration of video games in Los Angeles this June. And as you see from this image here, right here, Nintendo Switch 2 is included as part of the partners for Summer Games Fest, and this has not happened before. Sure, we have seen Nintendo Switch announcements at Summer Games Fest, but this is showing that Nintendo is officially partnered with Summer Games Fest here, and that's a bit different. And this becomes more interesting when we consider a recent pair of rumors we've gotten about an upcoming Nintendo Direct. Both PH Brazil and Nintendo have said they have heard that there's going to be a Nintendo Direct either in the launch week of Switch 2, which is next week, also when Summer Games Fest begins, or the week afterwards. And so now that we have confirmation that Nintendo is a partner with Summer Games Fest, this has some very serious implications here. It first supports the idea that there could be a Nintendo Direct happening very soon. Now, some of you may be saying, well, of course there's going to be a Nintendo Direct soon. We always get a Nintendo Direct in June. This is essentially true. However, since E3, the way Nintendo's handled their Directs has been a bit different. They've been happening later into the month, and they haven't always been big generals. And so these rumors are suggesting that Nintendo's going to be having a Direct sooner. Perhaps in the launch week of Switch 2, which I'm personally skeptical of. But now that we have gotten confirmation that Nintendo's partnered with Summer Games Fest, and Summer Games Fest begins literally the day after the launch of the Switch 2, well, maybe there's something there. Now, my expectation is this. We are going to be getting a variety of announcements for Switch 2 throughout Summer Games Fest. I do not think there's going to be a Direct literally in the launch week of Switch 2, but perhaps towards the tail end of Summer Games Fest or immediately afterwards, that's when we get our big General Direct. And so once Switch 2 comes out this upcoming Thursday, June 5th, going into the weekend we're going to be enjoying our new console, but there's going to be a whole bunch of announcements for different games coming to the console throughout the weekend, and then perhaps we then get our big Direct to learn even more about what's coming to this new console. And so the amount of announcements we may be able to see for Switch 2 could be a staggering number that us Nintendo fans are not accustomed to. But there's more to get into here. So recently, literally yesterday, Pokemon Company announced that the next Pokemon Presents will be happening on July 22nd. And that's also very weird, because Pokemon Presents, typically they're not announced this far in advance, and typically they're not in July either. This is a very weird situation. Now, oftentimes when we see a presentation from Nintendo or related to Nintendo announced this far in advance, we think, okay, this is a bigger deal than usual. Just look at the recent big Switch 2 Direct that happened on April 2nd. So what might this presentation have? There's a variety of possibilities here. Sure, we're probably almost certainly going to learn even more about Pokemon Legends EA. That is a given pretty much. We may learn about Pokemon Champions, another game that's coming to Switch 1, Switch 2, so that is a big deal. But also, given that we're just getting the new generation of Switch 2, Pokemon Company may do something here that perhaps not many people are expecting, and maybe I'm overhyping this. I'm just saying this now to temper expectations, but given that the console would have just come out by this point, right? I wouldn't be totally shocked if in this presentation they do make mention of the next generation of Pokemon. I'm not saying they're going to show off footage, but I wouldn't be surprised if they confirm that Generation 10 will be coming to Nintendo Switch 2. Which, common sense wise, obviously to some extent that's happening because we already have a Switch 2 edition of Legend ZA coming to Switch 2, and that's a Gen 9 game. But there could be other clues here. Now, the reason this is something that maybe we shouldn't expect is because normally when they announce a new generation, they do that in the beginning of the year in a February presents, and then it comes out by the holidays in November. But these are different times here. There's no guarantee that this next generation of Pokemon is going to be coming out next November. It may be coming out sooner. We've already been hearing about different rumors and leaks surrounding this game. It may be coming out sooner than expected, and even if it's not coming out sooner than expected, they may want to have a longer reveal or announcement to release hype cycle here. Because this is the beginning of a new generation, and Pokemon Company may be taking a significant leap here, and they may really want to use Generation 10 to reach a new level, especially considering all of the controversy and negativity surrounding different Pokemon games over the last few years. But there's something else people have been freaking out about. As you see here, friend of the channel, Nintentalk, shared this image from his Nintendo Today app of his calendar, and it says something interesting is happening on June 16th, an Animal Crossing Direct. I asked him directly if this is legitimate. He told me it is not. He was just excited because his phone was syncing up with the calendar on the Today app. So people who have seen this and are blowing out of proportion, no, we have not gotten a leak for an Animal Crossing Direct, at least for now. However, I will bring something up here. We have heard, there's a rumor, that there could be some big announcements from the Today app here. So it won't just be Summer Games Fest and Nintendo Direct and the Pokemon Presents, where we'll be getting more announcements over the course of this summer, but perhaps in the Today app as well. And we've been getting little updates in the Today app over these last few weeks. We've been learning more and more about different Nintendo games on the Switch too. But we heard from Nash Weedle during a podcast with friend of the channel Attack the Backlog that there are going to be some Today app announcements, and he mentioned Metroid Prime 2 and 3. So we've been waiting a long time for these games, and a lot of people have been saying they're not happening anymore, even some leakers thinking that it's not going to be happening anymore, they've given up on it. But Nash Weedle suggesting that these games might see an announcement on the Today app. And considering the timing of things, I think most likely we would see these announcements at some point during this upcoming summer. And what I'm getting at here is that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond most likely is coming out before Pokemon Legends ZA, which has now been confirmed to be coming out October 16th of 2025. So one of the reasons why I think Prime 4 is coming out before Legends ZA is because when we take a look at Nintendo's explanatory material for their financial earnings release, before they had confirmed that Legends ZA is an October release, it was just slated for late 2025. Prime 4, on the other hand, just says 2025, which gives me optimism, doesn't prove or confirm it, but gives me optimism that Prime 4 is before Legends ZA on October 16th. But also, when we consider the games we've been learning about from Nintendo through the Today app and such, we've been learning a lot about Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, but there is another game that Nintendo has been showing occasionally, not as much, but more so than other titles coming out later this year, and that is Prime 4. Which personally to me suggests that it's not ready for June or July, but it's coming out a little bit after that. It's a part of that next wave. And so considering what we know about the lineup so far, we have Pokemon in October, and before that we don't know about anything for September. We do, however, know a little bit about August. So Kirby the Forgotten Land, Switch 2 edition is coming out August 28th. However, we also know that Dragon Drive is slated for this summer. So Dragon Drive is a smaller title, it's a digital-only title, but it's coming out this summer, right? If it's not coming out in June with Mario Kart World or July with Bonanza, then I think that kind of positions it to be an August release, so it still fits into that summer period. Technically, I guess they could also squeeze it into September and they could argue it's a summer release, but I think August for a small game like this makes a lot of sense. Sporty titles like this tend to come out during the more traditional summer months, and again, it's also not a bigger title. I don't think it needs as much time to get out there, so definitely Dragon Drive I feel like is also most likely an August release. And with Dragon Drive and Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I think that might be enough for the month of August. Now, considering that we're getting Mario Kart World in June, and also Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions, and then in July we're getting Bonanza and Mario Party Jamboree Edition, I do think it makes sense to think that Nintendo may continue a similar pattern here, where they'll have an exclusive Switch 2 title and a Switch 2 edition game. So we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land, maybe Dragon Drive, although Dragon Drive is a digital-only title, not as substantial, so there's some wiggle room there potentially. Perhaps Prime 4 could be squeezed into August, although personally I'm skeptical. I think September is the ideal month for that. Which brings me back to the conversation we were having about Prime 2 and 3 getting announced for Switch 2 through the Today app. I think it makes a lot of sense to have these Today app announcements maybe later into the summer, and they come out perhaps in August, right before the launch of Prime 4 in September, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a very similar scenario to what we saw with Pikmin 1 and 2 when they came out a few weeks before the release of Pikmin 4 a couple years ago. I wouldn't even be surprised if they also announced some sort of free enhancement for Prime Remastered, so it has a higher resolution when you play it on your Switch 2, when they also make the announcements of Prime 2 and 3 coming out before Prime 4. But now let's have a little bit more discussion about the holiday title. So Pokemon Legends Z is coming out in October, which is leading many people to speculate, myself included, that there's gotta be at least one more big thing to come out this holiday season, perhaps November. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I saw some pushback here where people were saying, well, maybe Pokemon's just the sole holiday title. And I just think that's extremely unlikely. Let's take a look back at 2021, for example. In the holiday months for 2021, we saw Nintendo publish Metroid Dread in October on the 8th. Later in the month, Mario Party Superstars on the 29th. Then November, in some regions, they also published Shin Megami Tensei 5, a big third-party release that we've been waiting years for. It was announced at the beginning of the Switch 1 generation. And then a week later, we also got Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. And then also in December, we had Big Brain Academy as well. So I bring this up to highlight that Nintendo can have several titles coming out during a holiday season, even within a particular month, and this is just randomly 2021. We're talking about the launch year of Switch 2, the first holiday of Nintendo's next generation. If there's a time to go big, this is the time. So to only expect just Pokemon for the October-November period, that doesn't make any sense. There's going to be more. The question is, what is the more? And no, I'm not sleeping on Kirby Air Riders, nor am I sleeping on Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. These games could also fit into that period, and there would still probably need to be more. What I think needs to be understood here is that they want to put out some big hitters, and there can be some other smaller games as well. Kirby Air Riders and Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment are not going to sell 10+ million copies. We'll be lucky if these games sell 3+ million copies. But we also are not even certain if Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is going to be coming out this year. At one point, Nintendo listed it for winter 2025, then they took off the 2025 timing, now it's just winter, which may mean it comes out early next year. These are possibilities. Either way, whether this game's coming out this year or not, I still think we need to have more. Pokemon Legends Z and Prime 4 are big deal games, but they are still Switch 2 edition games. We need to have a big exclusive title for Switch 2 from Nintendo that's also a big hitter. Kirby Air Riders and Age of Imprisonment are not big hitters in the sense of them having strong sales potential where they will exceed 10+ million. That is highly unlikely. So I think there needs to be at least one more title like that, and there has been another title that has been rumored, another big surprise title. What might that be? But the main point is, we're likely going to get at least one more big announcement during the next big Nintendo Direct. What we've seen from Nintendo so far supports that. I'll also point this out, we've seen another rumor from Nash Riedel where he's teasing that there may be more announcements, very much like the Duskbloods, other big third-party exclusive announcements for Switch 2. I'm all in on that. Those could be the kind of announcements we see during Summer Games Fest before we get our big Switch 2 Direct. So I think we're in for some very exciting announcements in the coming weeks, and throughout this summer, we're in for some good times here. I am excited. I am hyped. Switch 2 is coming out next week, everyone. I'm so ready. Well, how about you? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all real soon. Take care. Bye.